All right, so I think we're ready to get started now. And first of all, welcome everybody, and welcome to our second EMEA Windows 365 user group event. My name is Morten Pedholt, and together with me I have Nick Hall and Ola Ström. And before we begin into the sessions, I will just start out by doing a short introduction about who we are as a community putting these things together. So let's check that one out. So we from the Windows 365 community, we are doing these user group here. We are currently having 3 user groups, one in the US, one in the Asia, and now this one in the EMEA. And we are doing, well, basically all kind of stuff around Windows 365 because that's a service that we really like and we really love and are really passionate about. And what else do we do besides our user groups? Well, we do a weekly newsletter. So if you really want to stay up to date with the latest Windows 365 announcements or just blog posts, YouTube videos, and stuff like that, we are gathering everything in a newsletter every Friday so you can keep up to date easily. And lastly, we have our website where we're just doing basic knowledge sharing. This is also where our newsletters will come up. But in general, there are some basic knowledge sharing around, Windows 365. So who are the team behind? We are a bunch of people right now. So this is the whole team that are running the newsletters, that are running the website, all of these meetup events here. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions to any of the team members here. And lastly, how can you get in touch with us? We are on different platforms. We are on YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and of course, you can also reach out to us on our website. And I would also like to say, if you have a dream of doing a session of Windows 365 in the future, please reach out to us and we will like anybody who is passionate about Windows 365 to just tell some technical story or some deep dive or a customer story. It could be anything. So don't be shy. Just reach out and we will figure it out. So back to the agenda here. So yeah, we have three sessions here today. And Nick Hall, you will be doing the first one. So Nick, if you can come right in here.
Sure, no worries. Good morning, everybody. Morten, would you like to just give me access to be able to share the deck?
Yeah, sure.
Be great if you could do that.
Of course. Let me find you here.
Yeah.
A rogue mistake. Nick Hall.
Well, whilst you're doing that, perhaps if I introduce myself to the team and to everybody. So firstly, good morning and thanks very much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today. My role is ultimately, the goal of my role is to make this business successful. My title is the EMEA Landing Lead for Windows 365 business. So the goal of every product that goes through to Microsoft is to make it a sort of next billion-dollar business. It's a very grand hope, expectation, but that's the aim of every business that we start within Microsoft. And so my goal is to help teams create the sales framework, take this service to market with the go-to-market strategy, help write content, get engaged in large customer engagements and key strategic engagements, but also get the field from Microsoft and the partner ecosystem generally up to date and working in a ready state to deliver the service to our customers ultimately. I've been at Microsoft now 17 years and worked in corporate IT groups like AXA, Orange and BP before 2005. So I've been in modern work for nearly 30 years. So I've got a reasonable experience in my back pocket to help me drive this business, and this is actually the fourth product I've taken on this journey. Now, my original plan was to share with you, and I hope to share with you, the new roadmap for Windows 365. Now, for those of you who are NDA covered, that has been signed off and it is available to you to collect. Unfortunately, because I can't guarantee that everybody on the call is NDA, I've been unable to get authorization to share that today, because the public one is in the final sort of sign-off process. So what I thought I would do today was talk to you a little bit around the strategy we have within the Windows Cloud Experiences team, the way we position the service to our customers, and a little bit of how we work within Microsoft, hence the title, The Other Side, to try and give you an understanding of how we do things, how we position things, and where we're going with it, which then builds into the activities that you often get engaged in and land in your inboxes, etc. So with that, just wanted to talk very briefly about how we position our endpoint strategy, because this is key to how we talk about Windows 365 internally and also externally. There is still a sales process, if you like, within Microsoft to get people to focus on your technologies. As an account team or as a group of users, we still have, they have access to sell hundreds of different products. So what is it about Windows 365 that we can talk about to get people to want to sell this solution, and how do we sell it and how do we position it? So from our perspective, with an endpoint strategy, we see the physical and the virtual as a single entity. So when we look at our E3, E5 technologies, the ability to manage that irrespective of whether it's physical or virtual, that's the story that we're talking about. And obviously with Windows 365 and being this cloud PC category that we talked about, we do also have the dev box, which is currently in public preview. And we'll also then talk about the traditional sort of PaaS type VDI approach, which AVD brings as well. So we have to be able to talk about all of the options to present the right ones to the customers. Now, hopefully in most cases, certainly for myself, Win 365 is the right answer, but that's not to say that the others couldn't be used, because it purely depends on the use case. And that's ultimately what we drive. When I talk to people and I have conversations, I'm not necessarily having the conversation around the technology, the detail around it. It's about the use case. Is it the right use case? How's that person going to do their day-to-day job? That will define the success of whether Win 365 is part of their success criteria generally. So moving on to how we kind of position it, we talk about it in four key elements. Again, as much to internal audiences as our customers, but we really focus on these four elements: the buy, don't build, the ability just plug it in, turn it on and get going. That we feel is of huge importance. It's also starting to get a lot of traction with a lot of IT organizations that are under the stress of having to do so much. And we've kind of adopted this slogan in our team of "Don't be anti-SaaS." Get people to buy rather than build, because of the efficiencies, the operational efficiencies that can certainly do. And we're challenging people in that scenario. Do you need to build it? We often have conversations, and I'm sure you must come up against this a lot. People do things in a certain way because they have done for so long, but we're coming along, we're challenging the way people do it. People don't always like to be challenged. They like what they do. They don't always feel comfortable with change, and that's part of our job in our team. And I'll talk about the structure of our team shortly, but this is part of our job, to challenge people, to really push the boundaries, to push the point hard with customers, especially the ones that have got those existing traditional VDI farms. And it's kind of a flinch test, to see where their heads are at, where they're thinking, be provocative, see who bites. And we think with Windows 365 we can push that. So that's one area that we tend to focus on. Obviously then the ability to have the desktop and have that fantastic performance, and we see that, and I'm sure you guys see this, the performance of a Win 365 machine, how that works. We leverage that significantly in all of our discussions. The way it works with Teams so efficiently really helps build a fantastic story for us. So again, we're leveraging that across our wider go-to-market strategy with Microsoft All Up around how that brings it in. One of the other key elements that we also hear a lot from our customers, and probably it seems to be in nearly every conversation now, and certainly in the RFPs that we are seeing, sustainability has in some cases up to a 30% weighting. So for us as an organization, getting our sustainability story right with Windows 365 is really critical. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. We've got some good news coming in that area. But for us to be carbon neutral, being at that carbon negative position, hopefully by 2030, that's a really strong story for us as a collective group to really lean on, because so many customers need to do something. The chief sustainability officers now in those organizations are really pushing for their teams to have this as a key component. And in many cases, for us at least, they're the people that have a lot of the funding available to change the way that organization works. So if we're able to prove that, that's another key area that we certainly leverage as part of our discussions. And ultimately, and kind of the sort of the mic drop moment that we talk to people about, is really about the strategy for Win 365 all up. It is the future of Windows. It is where we're going. When we think about the way in which we consume Windows today, that will change over time. We are going to start to see, cheaper devices coming out on the marketplace because of this capability to leverage this service. We're already working with a number of partners and creating prototypes which will enable sort of $100 Amazon type devices you can purchase, which with the boot device, ultimately you could be buying a $100 device which has the capability of an 832 512 machine. That is really interesting for a lot of customers. But ultimately, as we then extend it further, working with hardware manufacturers like Lenovo, Samsung, having that capability, or any manufacturer, to be honest, but any of those organizations that have an OS on as an operating system on a television or monitor, leveraging that to then really be able to take this to that next level. So can we then use Windows 365 app on our smart tellies? Can we do it in monitors to then make sure that it's not just a device sat here at a desk? It could be I wander into my lounge, I have gone my smart telly, I've watched a bit of Disney, I've watched a bit of Netflix, and I can very simply, with a Bluetooth keyboard, click on my Win 365 app and consume my work and my activities on that. So it's about changing that, and about changing the way in which we are slightly in a box at the moment. We're pigeonholed into this VDI world. And what Windows 365 is much more, and that's the goal of it, is to take it out of that and make it more mainstream to everybody to consume. And we as Microsoft, as our other companies, are looking at and are starting to implement, you can choose to have a cloud PC now as opposed to a Windows 365 window, as opposed to a physical hardware device. So this is about changing the strategy. And certainly when we talk to people, we're really aiming with our Windows 365 conversations to focus on those end user compute teams, those head of Windows, those people, to get into that environment so that they understand where we are going. So with that in mind, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of how we sit as a team, where we fit. So every Microsoft product like Windows 365 that's new to market, it goes into what we call incubation. That is funded effectively by, or the heads for that business are funded by engineering. And we then work with our account teams, with our specialist team units, and with our partner teams to then build this business out. Now, depending on the product, there will be these things people call global black belts, of which is my formal title. And we are positioned all round EMEA, and there are a number of people in the APAC region. But ultimately, we are working directly with engineering on a day-to-day basis to take the feedback from the likes of yourselves, from the customers, to feed that into the engineering to improve the product, and then supporting the account teams and these specialist teams. At a certain point, when this product goes what we call mainstream, it is then the responsibility of the specialist team, and then we will then move on to another product. But our job is to build that business, working with all these key elements to support that customer in this environment. So when you're talking to us, when you're working with the likes of the GBBs, we are the team that are engaging at all levels within the Microsoft organization. We're like the the special forces unit that get dropped in, and then we have to then build out the framework, build out the technical capabilities, the readiness, and that's our job ultimately with this business. And with that, I thought before I leave you, a couple of slides. Firstly, who are those key components within the Microsoft engine? I wanted to make sure you knew who we were, because there may be times when you could do with some help, advice, guidance, and when certainly we can support the community as we move forward. So as you'll see there, you've got the likes of Seppi, who is looking after the Nordics. You've got Ilsa, who looks after France and Benelux, Duccia with Spain, Italy, and Portugal, Jürgen looking after Germany, Sam, Duncan Brown, and Daryl looking after the UK, and Dave. Dave is our EMEA technical lead. He's our super brains. If you ever met Dave, great lad. He really knows his stuff. He tends to go across a lot of the organisation on all the different areas. But these are key individuals who work in those regions, which have the same role as I do to take those businesses to market. And we've got Tristan and Vincent, who then are the partner leads working with the SIs and others who are then trying to drive that business. So as a collective, it is our responsibility across EMEA to take this to the market. So if you are working in certain of these areas, worth just pinging them on LinkedIn and saying hello and get yourself known to them, because I'm sure they'd like to know who you are. So with that, the last slide I wanted to share really was some updates.
But the combined total would have been over the 40% bracket, probably. That's it, yeah. So they
Oldest. Thank you very much. So on that note, let's go the updates. I can't share, as I told you, a lot of the updates that are about to be launched with the NDA roadmap, but if you have the NDA capabilities, you'll be able to reach out to your local contacts to be able to get them. But I did want to share just some interesting updates which may or may not be aware of. SSO has been launched. It's now available. It is supported whilst it's in the public preview. It's certainly in my self-host. It should all be in yours by now. So therefore, you should be able to work with your customers on that. We have indeed customers working already using that capability. The Shift Worker SKU, which was announced back in October, that's currently in private preview. It's still running. It's going to continue at least until into February. At that point, we'll then be able to then make some decisions and some firmer decisions on how we then proceed with that, and the commercial models and all the information and the intel that we've gained. We'll then be able to make some further announcements in the very near future on that one. Teams app sharing. Now, not directly a Windows 365 piece, but it's one that has been a real big challenge for a lot of the companies in the FSI industry. Historically, that feature has not existed in a virtualized Teams environment. That has now been added. And so for a lot of the big banks, a lot of the big investment houses who have to have share of their transactions on the screen with the various people, that's a key component that is now available for everybody to use, and that will certainly unblock a lot of the engagements that we've had historically and certainly help customers moving forward. As I mentioned, the roadmap is certainly out from an NDA perspective, and the public one will be finalized in the coming days, so keep an eye out for that, and keep an eye on the link in the known roadmap link that we provide. Sustainability report, we are providing, we have had a report written. It's going through its final sign-off process at the moment, and we can expect to see that in the coming month, hopefully, which will again support a number of requests that we're getting as part of RFIs and part of the general conversations we're having with customers. I've seen an initial draft. It's fantastic for us to see it. I think that you'll really enjoy seeing the output of that, based on being Windows 365 fans, as I'm sure you all are, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So the impact for the Windows 365 business is going to be great once that report hits. And lastly, we're starting to see requests coming in for DC coverage expansion. No commitment on time, no commitment on locations, but we're seeing a lot of interest to have extended data centers in Middle East and Africa, which will help a lot of our global customers as well. There may be more in the sort of more Western European region as well, but the coverage will grow as the demand requires it, and the business progresses in its maturity. So the last thing then, before I hand over, if there are any questions, happy to take them. Morten, have you noticed any questions in the board? I can just flick to.
Yeah, I can see a question here from
Okay, I can see Stefan.
Yep,
Yeah, great. So when do we expect fixed prices? So I would hope to see that. Hopefully they'll be confirmed in the next 4 to 6 weeks. That's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm expecting. Beyond that, it's down to the business and the information. I know that things have progressed a lot in the last few weeks. The confirmation of those prices and what that looks like, I'm expecting hopefully before the end of the quarter. Demo use for partners, Iro. Okay, as in you're looking for a single tenant, or you're looking for something which you as a community can have, or just you as an individual? Do you want to just elaborate on that for me? Okay, so I know there is a demo tenant available. As actually John's put it in there. There's on the CDX. Depending on whether you work for a partner or whether you're self-employed or however you are, there are mechanisms to get that. Largely speaking, it's through your own subscription. So if you've got an Azure subscription, I believe you can get them through there. But ultimately, the CDX is the one that we tend to provide, or your organization should have various subscriptions which allow you to set up a domain and device and then get your actual licenses from within that. So there should be within your own organization an ability to get a domain set up and have that turned on and get licenses made available to you. You just need to speak to whoever in your organization, I believe, is responsible for the licensing and the trial licenses and the subscription that partners get through that, for demo purposes at least. If there aren't any more questions,
I think there's one that's having his hand up.
Yeah, hi Nick.
Okay, what have we got?
Yeah, hi Nick, hi Morten. So question is like if we compare this Azure virtual desktops or AVDs, because conventionally companies were using the on-prem VDIs, now we shift towards Azure VD, and now the Bluetooth 65 comes. And then pricing is a challenge, because if you're buying any subscription, then we have to hold it for a year. That's like what I am aware of. It could be that I'm wrong. So is there any plans like for comparing the cost if we compare to AVDs and W365? Because that's the main challenge nowadays for the organization. Yeah,
so I think there's 2 points on that one. Firstly, Win365 can be licensed on a CSP model and an MCA model. MCA is more of a commercial, sort of for larger organizations, which is a 30-day process. So the commitment is only to 30 days for those licenses if you wanted to go down that route. As far as the pricing goes, I challenge the comment around it's cheaper with AVD, because I think it depends on the use case. If a user is using a device for say more than 3 to 4 hours a day, Windows 365 has or is often cheaper from a commercial standpoint. Again, depending on the utilization, the amount of cloud compute that your users are doing, that could be less, it could be slightly more. So I think it does require a little bit of investigation. Certainly when it comes to things like one-to-one devices, that's where Win365 really comes into its own. So if you do have people using one-to-one devices, the chances are they're using it for more than 3 to 4 hours a day, and therefore it's very likely that Win365 would be actually a cheaper option. The question then comes in multi-session and others, and we have seen in some cases multi-session environments actually be cheaper when the user's been given a one-to-one device, because despite having that multi-session, they're still running it for 10-12 hours a day, and actually the consumption they're using during that time actually is still higher than a one-to-one device, maybe a 2.8 128 type machine. So it does depend very much on the use case, but certainly going back to the original point, the ability to flex up and down on a monthly basis is something that a lot of customers do, especially for things like mergers and acquisitions where they're not going to need them for 12 months. Maybe they only need them for a shorter period of time.
Yeah, the reason for asking, thank you, Nick. The reason for asking was that, for example, if we have developers who sometimes require VM, sort of like we can say a machine to be provisioned on the go, and the idea for W365 is do not build, as you said, do not build it, just provision it. So considering these facts that certain, like for example, a company, the requirements could be that I need a low configuration W365, as some developers or high-end developers need a very high-end configurations.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see this a lot. There's a very famous toy manufacturer that has been on publicly gone out and said that they're using it for their environment, and they use it a lot for their developers. They have people come in, use that for a period of time because they effectively use developers as their external consultants, and away they go. And it works very well. They mainly have a 6-week, 12-week, or 6-month engagement time with the organization, but that's fine. The customer can then leverage that using, we have different sales models. We have the EA, which is the traditional buy it, stick it on the EA for 12 months and you pay for it at the end of that time, or you have that commitment for 12 months. But you do have these other options where the customers can still purchase for a shorter period of time if that need is for a shorter need. So you do have options to meet the commercial challenges that organizations have.
Yep. Thank you.
Cool. Well, Nick, we
Okay.
have to shut down your session to keep.
Yeah, apologies for overrunning.
time
you said we would, didn't you? So, well, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you today. If you do want to reach out to me, I'm on LinkedIn. If you do actually scan that, it does actually work. So you can take a photo of that and you can ping straight to me. If you have any questions, please do ask, and happy to support you. I do follow you guys on the community chat on the Twitter anyway. So I'm all part of the community, albeit not necessarily able to attend all the meetings, but certainly part of your group. And if you need anything, let me know. And obviously I'll share the deck. So if you want to review it, Morten can share that and you can see who your GBBs are locally. Thanks very much indeed.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nick.
Cheers,
so,
guys.
Yeah, as Nick mentioned, we will share the decks from today's sessions, and we're also recording this one. I forgot to say in the start, but we are. And we will share the recording on our YouTube channel, so you can go back and revisit the event here. Or if you have to go in the middle, you come back later. But time for next session here. Ola, will you continue?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Nick, for coming as well and talking. I hope my audio is good. I've had some issues in the past, so I'm just making sure. But let me share my content. I can find the right button to do that. Just give me a second, and I need to get this going. Okay, I hope you can see my screen all right.
Looks good.
Perfect, and I'm having... Okay, so yeah, let's get started. The topic for my session today is to talk around how we could create a secure workplace for the hybrid world using cloud PCs. And before we get started, just shortly who I am. My name is Ola Ström. I'm a consultant based out of Sweden. Work as a chief technical architect for a company called Advania Knowledge Factory. Been a Microsoft MVP since last fall within Windows 365, and been doing Intune stuff for the last 10 years, basically, which I don't really want to admit because then I feel old. But yeah, so the setup for today, I'll do some short intro about the idea behind my concept and a little bit setting the scene, and we'll do a lot of demos, clicking around, showing you how things work in practice, not just PowerPoint slides and recordings. And we'll do some short Q&As at the end before I hand it over to Morten. So the background around my whole thought experiment is a little bit that we are seeing more and more workers who are moving to a hybrid setup, both internal personnel, but also external parties like contingent workers, where you have consultants coming in and doing short-time work or working with you, but maybe from having devices themselves coming into this. where we can also see that we need to increase the security and make sure that we protect our data. This presentation is still kind of a work in progress, especially the demo environment. I'm still building this up. So this is kind of a sneak peek or just like a first version of this whole thing. It's partially inspired by the real world, but also a little bit utopia. But my idea behind this presentation is more to inspire rather than provide you with a finished solution, just showcasing what we could use the cloud PC for, more than just having a workstation. So, setting the scene a little bit before we get started. The goal I had going into this was to create a setup where we can use Teams, but we can still protect the sensitive material, so it can't really leave the environment, and we can't access it from any device. We still need some level of device management, basically, to be able to access the more sensitive information. You'll see in the demo later that I have two classifications or two sensitivity labels that I will use to grant access in different levels. I wanted to add some more security to the cloud PC on top of the security baseline, just to like tighten the security a little bit and make sure that we can't really have copy paste out of the session to the host desktop or something like that. Not access to the local file shares and things, or no, not file shares, but local drive and things like that. Doing this, I still wanted to access it from an external device. So using an unmanaged device in this scenario to access my cloud piece. And so the setup is a little bit the consultant coming in, working for a project basically, or like a project manager coming in, external project manager coming in and needing to access certain data. And I wanted to do this using more features than just cloud PC, so we can showcase a little bit more of a whole setup, moving from Teams to SharePoint, using some security features, conditional access and things like that. But of course, there's the cloud PC is the centerpiece of this whole thing. And I'm not looking to make this like how it would actually look. This would be more of a utopia where we could potentially want to be, but it's maybe kind of hard to get there of reasons A, B, and C for many companies, but just showcasing what we could do if we utilize the whole product suite. And just as a disclaimer, I'm taking a lot of shortcuts. This setup is not complete. There's probably more that we should add, that should be added to this to make it like perfect, but it's a start, and I hope I can inspire a little bit by doing this. So let's jump into the demo straight away, if there isn't really any questions at this point.
I think you're all good.
Perfect. Just let me change what I'm sharing. I'm losing track of all my windows today, ironically. So here I am at my unmanaged PC, or device managed by a different organization, to be honest. This is not managed by my demo environment. This, however, Cloud PC, because it's fun to demo Cloud PCs from a Cloud PC. But I think my idea is to start this off by just showing you how we can access things from a user perspective. The setup is that I want to access things in Teams and make sure that we protect the files in Teams. So I have to, as you know, you can access Teams from all types of devices, your mobile phone, your corporate PC, or the browser. So from this, I'm accessing a different tenant's Teams from my browser. When I've added Defender for Cloud Apps into this environment, so I can like put some policies and monitor the Teams activity. I haven't really put any restrictions in here yet, but I'm running everything through the Defender for Cloud Apps. So I need to confirm this as I sign into this the first time. And as you can see, the URL at the top is not really the standard Teams one. It has MCAS added to it. So we're getting into the team session, like you would expect. And as this loads, I have 3 different teams here. I have my all company team, and I have 2 other project teams. Like you can see here, I have a sensitivity label attached to this team, saying it's a confidential area. So I put some additional rule sets on top of this, how sharing can be done, how I can access files and things like that. And in here in my confidential team, I also have a top secret team. I can see the files, I can open these files. And there's also a label attached to each file, so I need to classify my documents. But there's also a restriction saying that I cannot print, download, or sync the file from this device, but I can use it in the browser. Same goes for the PowerPoint presentation. I can still consume it and do editing in the browser, but I can't download, print, or anything like that from this device, since it's not a managed device from my organization. And yeah, I can also see the chat and interact with people in the channel. If we move over to the other team, which I have a different label for, which is the high confidential project, where it's a little bit more sensitive. I want to keep this secret. You can still see the channel chat because I can't really limit that at the moment. But if you go to the file section, you'll see that I'm not able to access this. It just refuses me to connect, or it will show me an error message because because I've set a rule set saying that, okay, to access the files for this, I need to come from a managed device, which I'm not doing at the moment. So if we move over to Windows 365 instead, the start of the show, so we'll kick off the Windows 365 app. Now we'll have to do some authentication. This loads a little bit. Nice. So I connect like I usually do through my Windows 365 app, like I hope you all are familiar with. And now I'm entering my managed device, basically, as Alan Steiner, where I have Teams open, Teams and things like that. If we look at the same Teams now, I can still access this team. I can see my files. If we look at the confidential, but if we open my project document, you will see that it's not displaying the thing, the banner limiting me to do things. Now I can download this file, print it, and things like that. Because now I'm coming in from this file from a managed device instead. And if we jump over to my top secret project, where I couldn't see any files previously, now you'll see that I'm able to see my files because now I fulfill the requirements I've put on my user in order to access things. And if I would be to create a new document in here, I would be asked to put a label on it just to classify it in the same way so we know it loads. Actually auto-labeling it. If I want to add, so I can work with things now in my top secret project, which I couldn't do from a browser because now I'm in the controlled area, so to speak. So that's kind of the user parts of it. It's not more to it. It's maybe the more interesting part is the administration of this. So we'll disconnect this session and jump over to Intune and have a go at how we got here. So like I said, this is a part of many parts. This is not only Cloud PCs, this is also a few other things. To start off with, if we check in the Teams admin center, I've created 2 teams, which both have a sensitivity label attached to them. I actually have a lot of sensitivity labels in my environment, but I've added these 2, highly confidential. No, the confidential project and the confidential area is the ones I've been using to do this. So depending on what label I have on my team, they will get different rule sets in the backend. And the labels are controlled from Purview. If we jump into the information protection part, you can see here that I have the correlating labels here, which I've set up. It takes about 24 hours to sync out when you create a new one, so I won't showcase that. But this is where you would set that up. And there's a lot of good. I've got some links at the end to share with you guys if you want to know more about this. There's also a lot of other things happening to this. We have conditional access policies restricting the team, for example, for SharePoint, which I will show in a little bit. But in June, what I did here was that, of course, I enrolled my Windows 365 devices, like normal procedure, nothing fancy. On top of this, we have some security baseline policies added, which are basically just, I've taken the one straight out of the box for Windows 365 because they are pretty neat. You could probably add on top of this as well, but it's a really good starting point to just get going with your securities. On top of those policies, I've also added some policies around what I'm allowed to do in my RDP session around redirection, especially. So what I've added is that I want to control a little bit about how clipboard is working. Drive redirection, so I can't access my local drive, for example, coming from my host, and not really support all plug and play devices and things like that, just to make sure that we kind of lock this in a box. So I want to build a more secure platform rather than having anything go in this. I did forget to showcase that the clipboard doesn't work, but it just doesn't accept me copy pasting out. A little bit like MAM would work if you're familiar with that on the mobile device, but you don't really get an error message. It just nothing happens basically. So this is very good. So you can control a lot of things in your remote session from here. Same thing goes for printer. I don't think I added that in here though, but you can control a little bit more around that. Yeah, I got it right there. So I can't print from my to any printer connected to my host, so to speak, just to make sure that we don't lose information. And lastly, we got some conditional access rules on top of this to further lock it down. Of course, I'm requiring everyone to use multi-factor authentication, even though you didn't see it because I went in checking my session that everything worked before getting started. Then we have a conditional access rule for SharePoint, which is basically what's not allowing me to access those highly confidential things using session control and the app enforced restrictions, which are set in the label part of this. I got links for that as well. And this is only applied for the SharePoint part of this, just to limit that specific section, because that's where it applies some rules. And lastly, what I have, which didn't showcase in this demo, is that I have a session control policy set for both my AVDs and Windows 365 devices to actually require me to re-authenticate every 9 hours. So every day I come into the office, I would have to authenticate when accessing the Windows 365 app, just to add an additional layer of authentication before I connect. And you can control this for a lot longer than 9 hours, but 9 hours was kind of a good showcase for my demo purpose, at least. And that's all for my demo, to be honest. I don't really have anything more to showcase today. Like I said, this is still like a work in progress. I'm building this up, and I will probably have a blog post coming around this eventually to showcase some more stuff and my ideas around further ideas around this. But that's all for today. That's all I had. Thank you. And if you want to reach out, I'm on Twitter, my blog, and I'm also part of this community. So you can reach me through the Windows 365 community, like Morten showed in the beginning.
Awesome. Great, Ola. I think there's a question here from Nathan.
Yep.
If you're able to see that one.
If I need to update any mailbox policies, I haven't done so, so I don't think I needed to do that, because I've done really like a basic setup at this point, but no mailbox policies were updated during this work at this point. It might be that they need to be updated in order to work fully, but to be honest, I'm not really sure. I will, like I said, I have a few documentation links where I found inspiration for this. One from Simon Ogren and Microsoft Dev MVP, working for the same company as me. He has a really good post on this, and also some security guidelines from another Windows 365 MVP, Dominic, who wrote a little bit about securing Cloud PC, where it has a lot of good content in it. But that will be in the deck that we'll share at the end. If there aren't any more questions, I will hand it over to Morten to take this away.
Yep. Thank you so much, Ola. Let me share my screen here. I think you're able to see it now. All right. So I will go through a session here called Understand and Troubleshoot Cloud PC Issues. So now that we all learned why a Cloud PC can be valuable to secure your hybrid work for your users and external contractors, how do we even troubleshoot on our Cloud PCs? And is there any consideration that we have to think about regarding troubleshooting when we are thinking about our physical device and our Cloud PC device? What are the difference in the troubleshooting scenario? So that is actually what this session is about. It will be a mix of some slides and some demos. And if you have any questions, just feel free to put it in the chat or raise your hand and come off mic, and let's have a talk around it. So this is basically the agenda here. Some 4 simple topics that we will talk about going through. So let's just start off with it. And before I get that far, if you don't know me, my name is Morten Pedholt, and I work as a cloud architect at Apento in Denmark. I've been working as a consultant for more than 8 years now, mainly involved in Windows 365 and Azure Virtual Desktop as my primary area. And I, of course, also have touched base with Microsoft Intune and all of the services around AVD in order to support a deployment of it. I do have a great passion of automating stuff in PowerShell to Microsoft Graph or to the Microsoft Azure backend. So I do a lot of that. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, Twitter, or I think that's it that I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter. And I'm also doing some blog posts on my own website called Pedholt Lab, where I mainly blog about Windows 365 and in some cases AVD. So let's start the session. So physical PC versus Cloud PC. This is something that I hear a lot. What is the difference? And when you're looking at the documentation and talk to Microsoft people and Microsoft partners, we are having an idea of, there isn't any difference in the operating system. And it's pretty much the same. You deploy your same apps, same configuration. And the management is the same in Microsoft Intune. So why do we even need to talk about this topic? It's because I think it's important to notice there's actually a big difference between your physical PC and your cloud PC. So let's take a look at what that is, and some of you might know it already. But just to get things started here, your physical PC, we've been using that for many years, and we'll still keep doing. So you get to work at your home office or your company office. You start up your laptop or PC, and you are instantly working on it. Well, you might require a network connection to connect to your online services, but basically there isn't much anything from stopping you getting onto your laptop right away after you have it in your hands. So how does it look with the cloud PC? There are something in between now. So you still need your physical hardware, surprise. We are not there yet where we have the Star Trek monitoring where we don't need the computers. But you start up your physical hardware, and then something happens when you connect to a cloud PC, and when that something is done, then you are connected and can start working. So we are going to look a bit into what this something is. And I see it as a 4-part things that are going on here. And let's take a look at what that is. So the things in between. So one of the things that starts right from the start when you're trying to connect to your cloud PC is the client network. So the client network has always been important in order to get a good experience with the Microsoft services or just online services in general. But now that we're having a remote session to a virtual device, the client network is actually a pretty important part to have a decent network. If you don't have a decent client network, and it doesn't matter if you're sitting from home or at work, well, then you will have some lag in the end user experience for the user. Once we are over your client network, we'll get into some Microsoft network. And Microsoft has many data centers and a big network, and they have some gateways that we are connecting to in order to reach our cloud PC. And that's also add up some routing and some complexity. It's getting more complex than just turning on your PC and start working. And once we are routed through the Microsoft network, we are suddenly also met by that we need to have some agents installed on our cloud PC. These agents will be installed by default, so there's nothing we have to do. But we have to be aware of that we have all of these steps here that has to be successful in order to have a good connection for the end user. And the RD agents is making sure your cloud PC endpoint are connected to Microsoft services and you can do the connection. And not all of these agents here on the list is required to be working in order to connect, such as the web RDCC and the MMR host MSI is not required, but it's more a quality of life service for video and audio redirection. But pretty much all the others are required to be running. And the last part is the VPN solution. So depending on what use case your users are using the cloud PC in, most company has some sort of VPN solution. So you can either choose to host your cloud PC on a Microsoft hosted network or your own VNet in a Azure subscription. And regardless of which option you choose, you might need a VPN solution. And when you're putting your own VPN solution on top of it, it will add some more stuff that can break the experience, to say at least. So you should always make sure to not route your RDP traffic through your own VPN solution to ensure a great connectivity. And that also goes with some required URLs that we will look at later. So what does this mean? Does this mean that we will have to keep this in mind at all time and start troubleshooting from the client network all the way up to the VPN when the end user having an issue? That's not the case here. The important thing here is that there are just these 4 steps more in the Cloud PC world than you're seeing on your physical device. So you might having a user complaining about, well, my Outlook is slow. And that could be one of these 4 reasons. Or it can just be the reason that it has always been, maybe the cache is not turned on in the Outlook, etc. So it does mean that you have to really do a lot more effort when doing a troubleshooting. You just have to be aware of, well, if my general troubleshooting are failing, the troubleshooter that used to be working on the physical device, well, then I might start looking into one of these if any of these are failing. So how do we get some insight into these things here? We have something called performance data, and performance data is automatically connected by Microsoft on your Cloud PC devices and are imported up to Microsoft Intune. And this is the view that we have on the performance view here. So we have a bunch of things to look into actually. We have some connectivity status, we have the quality of the connection, and we have the hardware performance of the Cloud PC. And then I will also just briefly go over to some service health and Microsoft support, because that's actually really important when managing Windows 365 Cloud PCs. So I will jump in a portal here. And this is my demo and test lab here. So I have a couple of Cloud PCs in here. For those of you who don't know, this is where we will deploy and manage our Cloud PCs configuration in here. And as you can see, I have 2 Cloud PCs in here. So if I'm getting a user report or a ticket about something is going slow or they're not satisfied with the performance, etc., I'm able to go into this view to see some more details about it. So the first neat thing up here is that I can see if the user is signed in. And some people are thinking, well, is that really useful in a troubleshooting scenario? And I actually came across one user that put in a ticket to me saying, well, he ran some kind of program on his PC and told me, well, it's really slow, it's not working. There was some network errors and stuff like that. And I went in here and could see that he was not connected, and he was never been connected because there was no data in here. So that actually told me that he misunderstood what a Cloud PC was. So he was actually working on his physical PC instead. And that really saved me a lot of time in the troubleshooting scenario to get through it. I see there's some question here. Performance page monitor if employees are logged on and working exactly sooner. So yeah, you can monitor the how many hours they're in here. We also have some neat things up here. So we can see the provisioning policy. And the provisioning policy is where we do our Cloud PC configuration. Where is it deployed? Is it hybrid join, etc. And we can also see how many days it has been since the last sign in. And 0 means today. So I've been logged in today, but I'm not signed in right now. So yeah, we have the overall connected to device status up here. This, in a troubleshooting scenario, this will generally just give me an idea if the user actually are using the Cloud PC. So there might be a misunderstanding of what a Cloud PC is for a user. So this can save me some time, as I already told. And then we have the connectivity status. So if a user is telling me, well, I'm getting this error when connecting to my Cloud PC, or sometimes I get a disconnect and a connect again, I can go into the connectivity history here, and it will have all sort of checks here for domain join, domain trust. These are the agents that is mandatory for the Cloud PC to working. We can check all of these things in here, and it will either say successful or failed, and we can click on the failed and it will display a more narrow description of it. And we are also able to see the timestamps of it. Maybe the most important part here, the connectivity quality. So when we're talking about connectivity quality, we are talking about three things here. We are talking about the round trip time. That is also our, if we're gaming, we're used to call it latency. So this is our trip from our physical device up to the Cloud PC and back to our device again. And we have some remote sign-in time and available bandwidth time. And if I was logged in right now, I could see my current value from the time that I connected from my physical device up to my Cloud PC. And we can also see a report here. So this will do a report for every connection. And as you see, I have been logged in today, this morning, where my sign-in time was 10 seconds, available bandwidth time was 17, and my latency was 44 milliseconds. So that is quite decent. We are also able to see the average of this per day. So if the user are having a high latency and high bandwidth, well, then we are able to not conclude some stuff. We should never just conclude some stuff based on this data, but we should use the data with our knowledge. But the round trip time can tell me if we have deployed the Cloud PC in a wrong region. So Microsoft are providing Cloud PCs in many regions, and if you're not careful, you can easily deploy a user in the wrong region. So you have to get some kind of structure. But it could also be that the user are moving around in the world or have just moved to another country, and that will be the explanation here. And the available bandwidth will typically tell me that the network that the user are setting on is not a good connection when connecting. It could be a 4G modem or something like that that the user are sitting on. We see that a lot. And the remote sign-in time, well, this is, as you know, it's from the user connects to the user are signed in. And you can see here, down here, it took me almost 18 seconds. That's a pretty long time, but my average is around these 5-6 seconds, which is pretty good. But if we have a really high number of seconds here, that could also mean that we might get some policy down to our Cloud PC that we have to look through to see if anything is slowing the sign-in time down. And if we want to get a more deep dive into this, we actually have a section here on the reports, input analytics. And then we also have a remote connecting here. So the remote connecting part and resource performance is specially made for Windows 365. And in here we can compare all our models type, how well do they perform. So if we're having, I don't know, maybe 6 of these 2 vCPU, 8 gigs of RAM, and all of them are having, I don't know, 40 seconds in the sign-in time, well, then it might be something around the hardware sign-in or something like that. It can give us an idea. And we can also look at the based on the hardware performance. So we can get a list of all of our Cloud PCs in here and see who has the highest milliseconds, who has the most remote sign-in, and etc. But one of the more important things in here is actually the resource performance. So when it's not uncommon that I hear from customers saying, well, our users saying it's slow. Well, yeah, but what is slow? And that could be many things. That could be both the connection, that could be the application, that could be the network connection from the cloud PC onto your on-premise resources. But in here, we can get a little view of how the hardware on the cloud PC is performing. So we have like many other Microsoft services, a secure score or baseline, whatever they call it. And then they rate my setup to be almost perfect here. I would say I have it a little difficult with Microsoft Secure Score, but that's a personal thing. But if you get under the recommended score here, there will be some recommendations up here saying, hey, your cloud PC with 2 gigs, 2 vCPU, 8 gigs of RAM is not performing well. We recommend you upgrading that one. And I would say it's a nice indicator, but don't just upgrade it because it's just saying in the portal. But again, get the insight, use the knowledge that you have, and figure out, is it really the hardware that is the issue here, or is it something running on the hardware? In here, we are also able to see a overview of all our SKUs and how do they perform in RAM CPU score, and if there are some kind of spikes in here. And regarding the spikes, that is pretty interesting because it's really nice to know when a CPU is spiking, because that could tell us, well, maybe the user are running something on their cloud PC that require them to have a more powerful one. So we have a CPU spike and a RAM spike. The CPU spike is starting at 50%. So if your cloud PC user's CPU are over 50%, you will get a spike in here. And then you see you have the 0 to 100 out here. So if I was at 60% out here and I had a spike, it does mean my CPU was at 60%. This means that on the time that I was connected, 60% of the time I was connected, my CPU was over 50% of the utilization of the CPU. So if and I mean, it's not uncommon that I see that, well, CPUs are spiking. Also, if you're using the lower end cloud PC SKUs. But it doesn't mean that the user are having a bad experience. So you have to, again, get the information, see what's the issue, what are the user reporting, and figure it out. So the RAM spike time here is only when you hit 75% of the RAM, you will get a spike in here. And it's more common that you see CPU spikes in here than RAM spikes. But these two indicators can help you define if you have to upgrade the hardware or what could be the issue. So if the user are telling me, well, it's really slow when I'm accessing my file and I see nothing data in here, I'm not even worried about the hardware performance of the cloud PC, for example. But if I'm seeing the CPU spike around 100% all the time, well, it could be that the resource performance of cloud PC need an upgrade, or I have to figure out, well, what are the user running differently than they are used to, because we didn't see those spikes on this particular user for, I don't know, a month ago or something like that. So these are some neat tools that you can investigate when you're having a cloud PC issue to get some more insight and the knowledge into the cloud PC without connecting to it. So one more thing I want to touch upon regarding troubleshoot. If you're doing your own Azure VNet integration, then you have a VNet up here. So I have a integration because I need to hyperjoin some machines apparently, and I can see here that it failed in some checks here. So I'm able to go in here and see, well, it failed on some device sync. And from here, I can click on, it's out here, view details, and it's saying that my device AD Connect didn't synchronize in the last 16 minutes. So that's quite useful. But what I don't like about this is that I have to go in here and check, or I have to wait for the user to come to me saying, hey, something's not right. So what can we do about that? Microsoft has been nice to create a new alert section under tenant administration. You can go in here and we have some alert rules that we can enable. And one of them is actually this Azure Network Connection failure here. And here we can set some, I would say it's pretty basic, but it's better than nothing. I can determine the threshold of the alert. I can tell what kind of server-ty the alert should be on and the status. I can also choose a portal pop-up. That's actually quite nice because when you're doing an email, you might be doing it to a shared IT folder or a mailbox going into some kind of surveillance system or something like that. But if you enable the portal pop-up, you will see a pop-up here up in the bell, like when you create a configuration profile or anything else. And if you're not logged in when the alert is coming, next time that you log in here, the alert will actually come to you. So you will always see the alert if you enable the port pop-up. And unfortunately, we only have 3 alert rules at the moment. We are not able to create our own. That's really something that I hope they will implement. But we also have to think about that is a SaaS solution, so it might be limited what they will give us to start with. But this is definitely a good direction, and I hope that we will see a lot more in here in the future. So the last thing when we're talking troubleshooting is Microsoft support. And this is actually a really crucial part of troubleshooting, especially Windows 365. Because Windows 365 is a software as solution service. And just like Exchange Online, Office 365, stuff like that, there's a lot of things going on and taken care of us in the backend that only Microsoft has access to. So I would say get used to talk to Microsoft support, even though you might not like them. Because if you're facing some major issues with your cloud PCs, well, we can start to look into, well, what is it? Is it our app? Is it our VPN? Stuff like that. Is it our Azure VNet integration? But in the end, you might need to create a support ticket. And it's also important to notice that when you have a Windows 365 license, you will automatically get access to Windows 365 support. And many customers actually don't know that, but you have free support as a Windows 365 customer. So don't be afraid to create support tickets to them. They are very friendly. I have worked with them on a couple of tickets, and they just have some insight into logs that we are not able to get, that I don't think we will ever have, because it's a SaaS solution. And I totally understand that. But it's a important piece is actually to work with Microsoft on troubleshooting scenarios. And of course, let me see, where is it? The Service Health Center. So I think it was it 2 days ago, 1 day ago, there was some small issues with the Microsoft 365 services. So if you're having a lot of tickets from a lot of users saying we are not able to connect, stuff like that, it will be a good help for you to just jump in here to the Service Health and Message Center to see, well, do we have any known issues? If we have any known issues, there might be a workaround from Microsoft to provide you but in general, it will be Microsoft working in the backend to fix the issue for you, because they are the one who are responsible for that. I do not recall if you're able to set up a alarm in here directly. I don't think so, but there are some community tools out there where you can implement, so you will get an alarm when you have an incident in here in your service health. So this was just a quick overview how to gain some insight on your Cloud PC deployment. So let's try to go further in here. So gathering useful logs. Logs has always been a good idea to get to make sure when you deploy something, if it's an app installing a Google Chrome or whatever, it could be nice to have some logs to look through. And when users are reporting some stuff to us, we are also able to gather some useful logs. And keep in mind, you can use all of the logs that you used to from your physical device when you're troubleshooting to troubleshoot on your Cloud PC, because the issue might not be different from the two of them. But when we are looking at what is in between the hardware device and Cloud PC device, we can gather some interesting log files that I'm doing when I'm troubleshooting, at least. So in Microsoft Intune, when you go under a device, you have the opportunity to collect diagnostics. And this will gather a lot of log files, some keys from the Cloud PC. And this is also a feature for your physical device. And it will gather all of the logs that you see on the picture below. And we will just briefly go over what logs do I use to look into and why are they useful for a troubleshooting scenario. I would say in general, all of these logs are really useful in troubleshooting in general. So if you don't use collect diagnostics in Intune, I will definitely recommend doing it. Also because you can do it without connecting to the user's physical device or Cloud PC. Anyways, so a nice good thing is ipconfig. One of the first thing I always look through, even though that we are not supposed to change anything in here, because much of the stuff are managed in Microsoft Network, handling by Microsoft. This will actually give me an indicator of if people have tried to mess with some of the settings. And most of the users might not be local administrator. I understand that, but there might be some scenarios for maybe some super users, maybe some developers, contractors, users like that. And in this particular screenshot to the right here, I can see from the log that's called 36 here that there's configured a Hyper-V virtual Ethernet adapter. So this tells me that the user that has this Cloud PC has enabled the Hyper-V function and has configured a virtual switch for Hyper-V. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if the user tells me, well, last week I did this, I tried to set up my Hyper-V and now I'm not able to connect, stuff like that. I'm able to validate the configuration here and to see, okay, this might cause an issue to the connection that the user are experiencing. So again, this is all about getting the insight, and we will take a brief look in a moment how we can resolve this issue. So another good one is team audio video redirection optimization. So in order to get a good picture and audio quality on your Cloud PC and in your Azure Virtual Desktop environment in general, we will use Teams AV redirection, and it contains of this WebRTC agent that we saw installed earlier on. And here I can just briefly see what are the version, when was the last time it was updated, where is it installed in the correct place, stuff like that. And the registration key that we see on top here, that comes from the number 6 log, will tell me if the Microsoft Teams is installed in the correct version, because it will need a specific reg key in order to be installed correctly on a cloud PC. And going forward to the RD agents and RDS config. So we have a terminal server configuration, and in general, that is not important, to say the least. But in the terminal server configuration, there is actually some attributes that we're able to look through. So if the users are telling me, well, I'm not able to see my redirected printers, for example, and I gathering the logs from the Cloud PC, I'm actually able to see if there's some settings in here, this terminal service configuration, that is deployed to the Cloud PC. So if I see in my Intune that I haven't deployed any policy to block redirected printers, I can check this log to see if there's any manual settings set on the Cloud PC. Maybe there's a supporter that done it, or maybe it's a script running in the background or something like that. But this can give me some indicators of the configuration. It's not something that I use a lot, but this is a nice thing to know. And now, actually the most important part here, the RD agents. So the agents that has to be running before we are able to connect. So on the log number 2728, we can see if the services are running. So if the services are not running, well, we are not able to connect to the Cloud PC. And then we can either restart the Cloud PC, or we can send out a PowerShell script to start it, or figure out how we are going to resolve that. And the last one here is a folder containing some TXT files. And the RD agents are having, well, different versions, and they are being updated automatically by Microsoft. And in here, we can actually see the install log. So we can, if we're getting a lot of issues from users saying, well, we are not able to connect to our Cloud PCs after the weekend, and we're seeing, well, okay, we can see there has been done some backend updates on the Cloud PCs, and it's failing with the error code, etc., something like that, then we can start taking it from there. And lastly, to some event logs, there are some logs that is useful. So we have the remote desktop services, and in here I'm typically just looking for what services are stopped. So we can see the RD infrastructure agent is stopped. And we can also see if the Cloud PC are unable to contact certain URLs that is required. So on the first, maybe I should take a pointer here. So over here. So right under here, we will actually see a lot of URLs for a lot of gateways here. And all of these gateways are actually required, or not all of them. But if you're seeing that users are sometimes getting a disconnect or connect, it can also mean that you're not able to access all kinds of gateways out there. And if there is any gateways that the Cloud PC are not able to connect to, it will be listed under the not accessible URLs down here. So this also can give me an indicator of if there is something in the network that aren't good enough that we have to look into, or if it's something else. And lastly, for the troubleshooting, it's always nice to know something about networking, because Cloud PC are a network PC, and if network is not working, well, you will have a bad time using it. So I will not go over how to use Microsoft Network Monitor, and some of you might laugh right now because it's looking something like for I don't know, Windows Vista or something. But you can use all kinds of different tools like Wireshark, Network Miner, Fiddler, But in general, when you're having a support case, Microsoft Network Monitor is the tool that you will be using with Microsoft support. So we are using this tool to gain insight to why are using getting a disconnect, why are you not able to connect to certain internal resources and stuff like that. Maybe I will do another session of that in another time. That's a long topic, but it's just nice to know that there are some tools where you can gather some traffic info, and then you can analyze it, or you can certainly give it to your network administrator, and he will understand what is going on. All right. So troubleshooting action. What are we able to do to troubleshoot? Well, we are able to do two things. Not much, to be honest, but the user itself are able to initiate a troubleshooting. So if the user are not able to connect to a cloud PC, they are able to initiate a troubleshooting. And we as administrator, if we are seeing any errors in the performance overview that we saw a while ago, then we are able to initiate a troubleshooting. So on the left, it's us as IT administrator that are able to click on troubleshoot this connection, and it will do exactly the same as if the users are using their own troubleshooting button. So what will actually happen when we're clicking on this thing? So the short answer is there's nothing official about it. The long answer is when you click the button, there are some predefined scripts that will run on your cloud PC. And it's not some script that are available for anybody. But the scripts will do some checking of the agents is running. They will do some connectivity tests to the gateways and stuff like that. Some general steps. I think there's 4 or 5 steps. As I said, this is not some official scripts that you can look through, but I can give you a hint that you can actually capture the scripts when they are running. So if you do a troubleshooting, you're able to capture the scripts, and if you are used to handling Azure VMs, you will know where to look. But in general, it's not important what they're actually doing. The important thing is that we are able to initiate the troubleshooting, and maybe that is able to fix the issue. And the cool part is, of course, the user are able to initiate the troubleshooting themselves. So, what if all access fails? That is actually a pretty important one. So, when we are having physical PCs, we're used to, well, we can remote into them, but we can also go over to the user, even though that they are not having a network connection, and we can start troubleshooting the network. What is ipconfig /all and DNS flush and stuff like that. We can still remote into a cloud PC like we can on a physical PC, and that will be the preferred way to troubleshooting, of course. But what if we are getting taken from the user saying, I'm not able to connect? We run the troubleshooting that we just saw in the admin portal, but the user is not still able to connect. What are we doing from here? So basically, you are just logged out. You're not able to log into the cloud PC. So there's actually I would not call it an official backend to it, but it's something that is pretty neat to know. So if you're having a Microsoft Defender license, you will get access to what's called Live Response Session. And Live Response Session is a cloud-based interactive shell that you as IT administrator can interact with from the security admin portal to any device. The requirements here is that device must be connected to the internet. That's it. There are some things to notice before using this. So even though it's a shell, it looks like a command prompt. It might look like a PowerShell prompt. It definitely isn't. and you are not able to start any of those programs directly. So you can run some commands. Those are limited. And you're able to download files from the PC, and you're able to upload files and run it. So this means we're able to create a PowerShell script doing something, read star services, or disable Hyper-V function in the Cloud PC, because that might be the issue for the user not connecting. Upload it and then run it. So that's pretty neat. And the required permissions to do that is, as far as I can see, security administrator. I haven't found any more specific permissions to this live response. So let's briefly take a look into live response. It's actually really cool. So you have to enable live response first, and it's all happening in the security pane up here. And that's also causing some trouble for some organizations, because you might be split up in different teams, and there might be a security team having access into this view here, and you as the endpoint administrator might not have the access. But yeah, this is not something that you are supposed to use when users saying, well, my PC is slow. Okay, let's go in and do a live response session. Or this should be your last opportunity whatsoever. So in able to activate it, we go on to settings, endpoints, and you have to activate live response. It's default disabled, I think. And you can use it for servers as well as Mac OS, but the commands that you're able to use are different. So you have to be aware of that. In order to run scripts that you don't assign, you have to click this one to on. And after you enable these features, it will take about 10-15 minutes, and then it's working. So in order to initiate a session, go to device, and I have a couple of cloud PCs in there. I'll just find the correct one here. There we go. And on the three dots here, we're able to initiate live response session. So let's do that. And now we are connected. So when I first saw this, I was just immediately typing commands from that I used to do in command prompt, but there's actually a official list here of supported commands. So there are basic commands and there are advanced commands. So basic commands just let you, for example, show me registry values. Then you just type registry. Show me scheduled tasks. Show me services. Show me the directory that I'm in. That is familiar, right? So you're able to get a lot of things, and as you see here, there are some commands that are not available on macOS and Linux. If we go down to the more advanced stuff, you can initiate some stuff, but these are quite limited. And the only thing that I'm actually using is the run command. So we can run PowerShell script on the device. So how do we do that? So now I'm connected to a device and I'm able to upload a script here. And I have a couple of scripts. I'm just picking one of them called start required services, confirm. And we can then type library to see our imported scripts here. And apparently I have two of them. That is uploaded at the same time. So that might be a UI bug, but no mind. In order to run a script here, you will simply type run and then type the script name. You have to notice that this is case sensitive. So start run require services. Odd. Let me try another script here. Maybe this one. That's the good thing of a live demo. It has to go wrong at some point. So let's try again. Today's login attempts. Okay, yeah, see here. So it's quite case sensitive. So I think this will fix it. No? So what did I spell wrong? Okay, I spelled today wrong. But as you see here, just running the script on device, it's creating a transcript file to this folder. That is not something that I have put in my script, but it's just a default thing. And of course, it's not helping you that you're mistyping things. But like I said, it's very case sensitive. So if I'm just changing some upper and lower, it shouldn't be running. So it's quite handy if you're totally logged out of your Cloud PC. You can get in through this way, try to fix it. As I said, this is the absolute last resort that I ever use. Keep in mind the Cloud PCs are also in the circle of life of reprovisioning. So it's not uncommon to reprovision a device to resolve maybe some kind of specific issue. But you might have some users that haven't synchronized their files into OneDrive and stuff like that, and this will be your way in if your IT security team allow it. So I actually think that was it for me. So if there's any question, okay, I can see there's a bunch here. And feel free to unmute yourself if you like. But I see a question here. We have investigated Microsoft on RAM spikes. A lot of our devices, 80%. Okay, so a lot of your RAM spikes are above 80%, and you're using 2 vCPU, 8 gigs of RAM. Okay. Well, I would say in general, you should be able to run teams with 8 gigs of RAM. So, are you running anything else that might buff up the average memory?
Hi, Morten.
Yeah, hi.
I raised that question. Yeah, we have a lot of cloud PCs, and actually around 80% of them are having are mentioned in the overview of being above average. And if we look, we have a lot of them running 80% or more RAM spikes. And while investigating, we noticed that if you just start Outlook and Teams and that's it, then you're already at 80% of your RAM. Talked to Microsoft, did some digging into the articles, and they basically say the Teams will use all the memory there is. So then the question is, what is the point of having an overview of RAM spikes?
Okay, I think it sounds a bit weird that you're over 80% above with just Teams. But I would say the overview of RAM spike will give you an indicator of when you're getting some kind of issue in from a user. That's how I see it, at least. I can go in, I can see if there is any hardware performance issues related to the specific ticket that the user are referring to. And that can lead me in different directions. So of course, if you're having a hardware issue, which sounds like it does, like you do, then you will have to maybe look a bit more into that. I mean, I'm having customer running 8 gigs of RAM with Teams, but I don't see them spike that much.
Okay.
On
Teams. We actually raised the question because there's a nice little thing there in that performance overview saying, well, so many devices are above this average on RAM and the others on CPU. And our question to Microsoft was, well, what is it indicating? What do we need to do with this? Do we need to buy more CPU and memory, or what does it indicate? And there was not a very clear answer. But yeah, we indeed use it like that. When we get complaints from users about performance, we are looking into these graphics and try to solve that. But the most of the issues we see, and I'm wondering how you cope with that, is disconnects and slow connection. So the cloud PC itself is not the issue, but the connection to it. And because those devices are heavily used by remote workers that we hire from external companies, that's it can be a burden to get the right information, especially network tracing. How are the firewalls and network set up in external companies? Users say, well, you cannot get access to my device, and I will not send you any information on network traffic. So that's hard to troubleshoot for us.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, when you're having external contractors connecting from their own cloud, own physical PC, maybe on their company network, it's hard to investigate that, right? Because you're not allowed to get some information about the network traffic and stuff like that. So it's really a hard thing to do, but you just have to make sure it's not something in your end with your cloud PC or your VPN solution on top of it, and we have to make sure it's the connection between the physical device they're connected from and it's from their side. We are not able to just saying, well, you have to buy a better what's called internet connection or something like that. So it's a it's one of the toughest one to deal with. It is. So to answer your question, what am I doing when I get these kinds of issues? Well, it's just a dialogue with the external consultants or company, doing some recommendations to them, trying from different devices. Is it only on when they are at their company network, or what if they are working from home? How is their connection when they are on site at your place, maybe with their own PC? So just have to narrow it down, and we can only do recommendations out to that company saying, well, if you're going to use our solution, our secure solution that we make available for you, well, you will have to upgrade your XYZ.
Yeah, that's good. So we have a lot of discussions indeed on external companies and their firewalls blocking all kinds of access.
Yeah.
So that's also one.
Yeah. So one thing I would recommend you doing, if you're not already doing it, gather a list of all the required URLs, the required bandwidth. There are some official posts on it from Microsoft, what they recommend as a minimum, and that will be your not demand, but your recommendation to that company saying, well, we have this platform that you have to use because of security, for example, and these are the requirements that you have to fulfill to do contract with us. But it's something more above than just IT administrators, right?
That's correct. And that's also what we shared with those companies. So if there's a contract with an external company, which you starting to use cloud PCs from us, then they are sent the requirements. That's also in the contracting. But still, that's a hard one, because you first need to figure out where this user is, what company, where. Yeah, so there's a lot of work there.
Yeah. All right. So did that answer your question?
Yeah. And another question I have, and I'm wondering if others also experience this. We have cloud PCs that are at a certain point probably rebooted by a Windows patch and not coming up anymore. So you see that because they don't report. Now just the Windows monthly update, for instance. This month we had about 20 devices that stop reporting. So they are probably switched off and the user cannot connect to them anymore.
Yeah. And what I haven't heard of that from any of my customers yet, but I might do. But what about the connectivity overview? Is that all green in the connection with the?
I think it's all green. Yeah.
Okay. Because that should report the agent status and stuff like that in. But what I would do is just to gather the logs, look through the RG agents, update status and stuff like that, see if the services are started, maybe look at some of the event logs to see if some of the URLs are blocked. I mean, I've come across a update once that was on Azure Virtual Desktop, where a update on the Windows OS went in and did something with the built-in firewall that stopped it from communicating with the AVD service.
Yeah.
So it might be something like that, but I haven't heard that's particular issue.
What we noticed, it looks like they are just shut down. So what we do is a restart, and then we can connect to them again. But I'm just looking at one that's reported the last time January 15th. So in Intune last seen January 15th, but the current connection status is available. But we know for sure this thing is not responding anymore.
Yeah. But if you're seeing it on Mint device, definitely do a support case.
We have a support case running there, but they started off with saying, well, the user's using the shutdown command to shut device down.
Okay.
That was because we enabled the restart button based on your script. But yeah, I cannot imagine that so many users type in shutdown /s shut down the device. No.
Exactly. So yeah, but
okay, you've not seen it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
luckily enough, I would say. So any other questions here? Can you delete a device that is failing and get a new one? Yeah, you have the reprovisioning feature in the Intune portal where it would just redeploy your device. But be careful, it will delete everything on your device. It's like getting a whole new laptop, so to say. Make sure that files and folders are synchronized to OneDrive, and you should be all set. All right. If there's not any other questions, I think that's wrapping it up. And I see Matthias is in here, a good friend of mine. Good to see you, Matthias. Local support, I like it. But yeah, if you have any questions afterwards, feel free to reach out to any of us in the Windows 365 community, and we will keep you up to date with a new event coming, maybe soon. We'll have to figure out. But thank you so much for coming in, and hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, hope to see you next time.